Hey, I'm Alex, and welcome to Hallucination. If you love true horror stories, consider subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. The stories you'll hear are shared by our audience from Reddit, and to keep their original essence, I read them exactly as they were written. Before we begin, let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from? Also, check the timestamps in the comments for story titles and easy navigation. Now, let's dive into the darkness. I wish I could give a more romantic starting point, but I just don't have one. I didn't do bad in school, no Einstein, but I got by and kept my head down. I kept that up after getting into college, pursuing a major in English. Dealing with kids seemed like a nightmare, but teaching was something I thought I enjoyed. From the few times my friends asked for help with essays and explanations of one of the 1,000 poems we were expected to learn. I didn't have a mom at home, but I wasn't under any circumstances abandoned. My dad filled up both roles, tried his absolute hardest, and I'll always love my dad. He was a baker, but got promoted over time, and runs his own bakery. His bakery is how I met Scott. I was helping out with moving the pretzels from the storage room in the back to the front, partially because of the pretzels being bought, mostly because of me stealing them and eating them. When he first came in, I took one glance, looked back at the pretzels, looked back at him, saw him looking at me, and walked back to the storage room, still holding a whole bag full of pretzels. My dad gave me the worst side eye I've received to date, and gave me an all-knowing smirk, stating, "I know you're trying to hide it, but I can see you blushing." From there, I only remember jumps and moments, from him becoming a regular, to asking to hang out, from friends to best friends. I wish the feelings went away for some pathetic reason. I wish I could have stayed his friend because I know how much easier it is to be forgiven when love isn't in the equation. I tried for so long to not think about him, but I couldn't. He was the foundation keeping my head up, and he was the only thing in my mind. I loved the way he fixed his middle part in the wind. I loved the way he laughed and how clean his teeth looked. I loved the way he smelled and how his hands looked. I loved the way he talked, the way he wouldn't let people be rude without reason, but would try understanding every side. Every time I looked into his eyes, I saw a heavy heart with a soft inside, and I wanted it all to myself. Every other boy and girl that looked his way ignited a hatred in me, like some unforgiven sin they've committed in my eyes. And I do not forgive. I do not forget. By day, the feelings were sweet and quiet. By night, they turned loud and violent. Thoughts of him looking at me and telling me that he isn't comfortable around me. Thoughts of him seeing me the way I saw myself. I don't know what I was more scared of. Him saying he'll never love me, or him saying he loves me too. Then from those to worse, how I'd react if he died, how I'd hurt and hate myself, what I'd do if he fell in love with somebody. He wasn't ever mine, but I wanted it more than I wanted anything else in this world. We stayed friends for 2 whole years until I ruined everything. One cold November night, I had came over to his house in just a t-shirt again. I was doing that quite a lot actually. If he suspected anything, he never had the heart to say anything. I just loved wearing his clothes, his smell, his dead skin particles against mine, something that belonged to him covering me and keeping me warm. I belonged to him. He wasn't mine, but I was his. We had this obsession over Fight Club, where he enjoyed the psychological aspects. I just loved Brad Pitt and Norton. There wasn't anything special about the night. I just got drunk and made a mistake. Something came up in the movie, some scene where the two are making soap. He said we should try. I don't know what I was thinking, but I crawled over to him and kissed him. He didn't say anything, but his body language said enough. The dead motion, the stillness, the mix of shock and horror in his eyes. I sobered up quickly after that. I stood up and left, still wearing his hoodie. I don't know if he looked at me on the way out. I didn't turn around. I didn't deserve to know. We didn't text again for a very long time. I cried in his hoodie till the color drained out of it, till the color drained out of my eyes, my dyed hair, my painted nails. I cried till I couldn't cry anymore. I'd like to say I got over him, but it would be a lie. I kept on with life, but the ambition I had died off. Being an English teacher turned into working full-time at my dad's. The personality I had liked about myself slowly dwindled and shrank until I wasn't that person anymore. The memory of that person was in the pictures of me, and Scott I had saved as my lock screen. Scott's clothes I hadn't thrown out. I didn't turn to drinking, or drugs or anything drastic. I just got on. Life felt dull, and I knew there was no point of destroying myself. My dad deserved better. Yesterday marked 2 years of me and Scott not talking. I helped my dad cook some cinnamon buns, which I was more than happy to do. Cinnamon was a new favorite snack I had enjoyed. He said to go take a break, since the shop didn't need extra hands, until around 1 p.m. to where people would usually pop in for their breaks. We owned a building with 3 floors, and had the bottom floor dedicated as a bakery, and the other 2 were our living quarters. So I went upstairs and made a cup of tea in our staff room, which was really just our living room and kitchen. I turned on the TV and looked for something to watch for the 30 minutes I had, but couldn't find anything appealing. I turned off the TV, took a long sip from my cup of tea, and checked my phone. Scott had messaged me. "Hey." Classic. I tried to hold back the urge to write a paragraph back. I kept writing words and deleting them, and writing and deleting. Scott sent another message before I responded. "I assumed you set text sometime a little sooner, but I got bored of waiting." Guilt bit down into me. I could have written something. I should have. The love I held never fully dissipated. It couldn't. Dating just felt like I was cheating on him. Sex just felt empty. Nothing could ever break what I felt, but that night hit me in a way I could never recover from. What apology could ever possibly be enough? I wrote back. My fingers were typing, but I wasn't writing in a collected, intelligent way. My body was typing for me. "Why now?" He responded almost instantly. It almost made me smile at how fast he had typed a response back. "I feel like I led you on. I kinda always had a guess you were gay, but I just didn't think that you would." My heart was unbearably loud. My right leg was bouncing. My teeth were quivering. I didn't know what to say. There's no words that could fully express how I felt. How wrong he was. I wanted to tell him that it wasn't his fault. I wanted to apologize and say a million things. I settled on humor. My fault falling in love with somebody who dips chicken into maple syrup. After I pressed send, I got terrified. What if he didn't find it funny? What if his humor changed? What if this and that and this and that? He responded with a shitty gif of a crying laughing emoji, with the caption, "Nobody said that anymore, or used that gif." He's such a loser. Low blow coming from somebody who drinks Bloody Marys. Jokes became catching up. Catching up became talking, and talking turned serious quicker than I was comfortable with. He wouldn't bring up anything recent that happened in his life, only asking about me and trying to expand things as much as he could. From spiked seltzer to bottles of painkillers, nothing had gotten exciting. I never got addicted, but talking to him made me realize I'm technically sober from drinking, since I hadn't drank in over a year. Then almost out of nowhere, after him laughing about my cinnamon obsession, I mentioned I wasn't actively trying to be sober, just hadn't had anyone to drink with. He responded with a message I really miss seeing. "Wanna come over?" I got some Coke and some Smirnoff. Within a minute of reading the message, I asked my dad to skip work, after a heavy apology and a promise to do all the cleaning myself when I returned. I left towards the apartment Scott said he was staying in. I knew it was just friends as we could ever be, but my heart was racing. I was wearing the gray hoodie I had taken on the night. I kissed him. I held my phone like a baby and kept checking down to make sure the message was real and that I hadn't misread it. It hadn't snowed, but all the local nature was covered in frost. It was still bright, but due to November, it would be pitch black in a matter of 3 to 4 hours. The sun wasn't visible. The glow gleamed through the clouds and shined onto all of the town beneath. Rain was drizzling down with an apparent high risk of heavy rain. But at the time I thought my weather app was over-exaggerating. If I waited 20 minutes, I could have had the bus bring me over, but it was only a 15-minute run, and I wasn't patient to wait any longer than I had to. When I got to the block, my first thought was how horrible the building looked. On Google Maps, it looked like a relatively clean, gray-painted building, ruins of some kind of apartment block, begging for revival or a deep cleaning. The building looked all wrong, in every sense of the word. The graffiti was everywhere, but none of it was coherent. Odd sentences that made no sense. Strange drawings and strange glyphs. The concrete had some kind of outer coat that was peeling off. What wasn't falling apart was covered in vines. It stood out heavy in comparison to the 2 brightly painted yellow apartments on its left and right side. I went up looking for a buzzer, but couldn't find a keypad or any way to contact a tenant. I had been behind on my phone bills and have not been prioritizing keeping my data paid, so I had no way to contact him. Half expecting it not to work, I pushed the graffiti stained glass door. To my surprise, it opened. Dust and ancient cobwebs blew off the doors. Cold air blew out, as if the block had its own wind within it. I walked in and smelled heroin needles and crying women. Some kind of place tainted in heavy memories and violence. This couldn't have been right. I turned back and began to walk outside, but was greeted with heavy rain. I could have left. I was raised here. I'm adjusted to rain. Nothing was truly stopping me, but I knew this was the right place. I went onto Google Maps and traced each road and followed to the gray apartment sandwiched between two colorful ones back home. I was too confident to go home. I turned on my phone planning to see if I can still access maps without Wi-Fi, but got greeted with the last message from Scott. A new one had appeared. I love you. I glanced over it and saw it but didn't fully process it at the moment. I checked back down and read each word letter by letter. My heart ignited and I dropped my phone in a panic. It hit the concrete hard and I saw pieces of glass shatter and bounce away. I crouched down and picked up my phone. It went from a small crack to a huge one. Half my screen was a neon green, and the bottom half a neon pink with white section lines like cuts. Only the middle was visible. Only the last text he had sent me. I knew he didn't. I got scared. What if he was doing something awful to himself? What if he just wanted to text his old friend goodbye? What if this was his goodbye? My mind snapped in a panic. What room was he in? I couldn't check my phone, and I couldn't check each room in this block. Think. Conversation. Laughing about eating habits, inviting me over, telling me the address. The 2M in room 14. It's on the top floor, but don't take the elevator. It's on its last leg. 14. I shoved my phone into my pocket and went towards the stairs. The building didn't have any of its natural light, so I used the broken screen of my phone to light the way. There was a yellow, stained rug on the floor of the stairs that followed me all the way up, each step squishing some kind of unknown fluid into the fabric of my runners. I wasn't paying attention to smaller details, but I could imagine maggots on the floor crawling to the decaying, rotting body of Scott, dying alone next to the phone, waiting for me. I sped up. His name was stuck in my throat between panting breaths. I let him out, screaming and pleading and begging, but I got up to the last floor. I stopped for a second to pant, and then looked up at where his door was. My heart sank into my guts. His door was covered in some kind of green moving vines. Some form of green tendrils moving, swirling, almost breathing. The ends were caressing where the number of his door was. 14. I charged into the apartment and tried breaking through the door but failed to break it down. The tendrils reacted and shrunk, tightening against the door. I followed the tendrils with my eyes and realized they led into the room. No, they were coming from the room. Scott? I whimpered. Scott, what the fuck is this? Are you okay? The tendrils remained unchanged. I took 4 steps back, counting each one, and charged back into the door, slamming against it with my shoulders. I took more steps and rammed over and over and over and over and over and over and over until the wood reached a breaking point and I ended up crashing right through the door into the apartment. I coughed. My lungs and shoulders felt like they were burning. I luckily didn't get any splinters or land on anything sharp. In fact, my landing was weirdly soft. I put my hands under me and pushed myself up to see the apartment. It was overgrown, writhing green vines shifting and moving lively, covering each possible surface of the floors and the walls. Some areas led into masses of contorted greenery, which had gorgeous red mushrooms growing out of them. The only light illuminating the room was a scarce yellow coming from the right to where I assumed the bathroom to be. I walked forward, trying to avoid the vines, and went into the bathroom. There wasn't any of the bathroom left. From the floors and ceiling to the doorway and walls, everything was covered. Not an inch of tiles or plaster was visible. Pulsating, swirling, shifting and breathing vines moved across each other like snakes fighting over any ounce of color that wasn't green. The living tendrils swirled and I picked a single one and followed it from its end, all the way over to where I realized all the vines were coming from a huge cluster of them in a particular shape. A bathtub. I wanted to run and scream and cry more than anything, but I couldn't. Something overtook me. I looked down to my feet and saw one of the ends of the vines had wrapped themselves around my foot. It wasn't a strong sensation like it was forced. It was warm, inviting. I took a step forward, and the vine let go, moving under my foot and making space onto the floor for me to move without hurting the vines. The moment I got close to the tub, the vines shifted and moved and opened up a viewing window so I could see the contents hidden within. I collapsed onto the floor beside and grabbed onto the vines. They held me back. He wasn't groaning. He didn't have that much left in him. His skin was plastic, faded, yellow, shining. It looked wrong. Vines contracting and shifting around his exposed rib cage. He only had one organ left. No lungs, no liver, no stomach, no intestine, just a massive bloated heart. It was shining orange with a bleak white hue at the bottom. It was beating and barely contained in its wooden rib cage. I rubbed the vines, realizing the pulsating of the vines matched Scott's heartbeat. I held the edge of the tub, feeling weak. A vine slowly moving and wrapped itself around my hand. It didn't speak to me in the general sense. More so I felt the meaning. It went beyond needing to be understood. The guilt, the loneliness, all the girls he left behind broken and sobbing. I felt what he had felt in my absence, the good and the ugly. Scott didn't love me the way I loved him, but he missed me, and in his own way, he did love me back. I sobbed, crying from all of his pain passing through me. I felt like I was being gutted. The vines leached off of me, prying into my love for him. I wanted to leave. I wanted to leave more than anything. I loved him, but he's gone. There's nothing left of him. Nothing to love. I tried to take my hands off of the bathtub, but noticed the vines held me in place. When I tried to pull against them, they held me tighter and pierced into my skin, tightening and impaling and holding me still. He didn't want me to leave. Whatever was happening, whatever he was changing into, he didn't want it to happen alone. I tried to use my legs to stand and push myself against them, but I found my whole body encaged in their grasp. Scott, please let me go. His dead mouth didn't so much as twitch. The grasp didn't change, only got tighter against my body once I put any force behind it. I tried one more heavy squirm to fight against the vines and got sent into agony. My arms, my legs, my hands, my thighs, all of them tightened and crushed my body, trying to lock me into position. The only thing I had any control of was my neck and my mouth. I felt my body getting weak, the pain shifting all throughout my body, making me hear my own heartbeat. I could also feel my own blood flow slow and boil into my brain, making every thought a nightmare to hold on to. I love you too, Scott. I cried. I cried it out with a tear while my whole body was burning. I repeated it. I love you. Begging and pleading and praying for the words to go through, and for something to change, but nothing did. It just got tighter. I gave up and cried, weeping in the same place and moving my head down to try to put myself against the bathtub. I then noticed just how far I can reach down with my mouth and decided on one final idea. As quickly as I could, I moved my head down and bit down at the vines around my right hand. The bite made my entire right arm burn as if I was gnawing through my own flesh, but I pursued. I bit deeper and deeper, seeing blood leaking from the vines. I chewed and spit and chewed and spit and chewed and spit until I had a weak enough section to tear my hand out of. As I got one limb free, all the others got worse, but I had my strength, and I knew if I didn't fight now, I might never get the chance to fight again. I pulled on my left hand and moved it as close as I could to my mouth. I got it and pulled and dragged it into my mouth and gnawed. With both my hands free, I tried to rip the vines off my legs, but had no such luck. The more I pulled, the worse it got. I couldn't rip the vines off of me. What should I do? What can I do? I looked over at Scott's body. I noticed a small glimmer on his cheek that had fallen from his eye. Scott had been crying. He can't control this, but he's conscious. I know he would have wanted me to. I know he didn't want to be trapped there, in a personal cage. I grabbed onto the wooden ribs, keeping the strange beating heart in his chest, and tore them. They were fragile, wet, weak. They broke off easily. I broke 3 more, giving myself enough space to reach into the chest and grab. It didn't feel fleshy or wet, anything you'd associate a beating heart with. It was almost rubber, some kind of smooth silicone texture that was soft and squishy. I put my hand underneath it and felt it beat, and instantly pulled my hand away. The curiosity which had become Scott's heart had shocked me in some way. I looked at my hand and saw tiny specks of green injected into spots around my right hand that burned. I did my best to ignore them and wrapped my hand around the heart. The vines that still had a grip on me began tightening more and more, and I felt like I had seconds before my bones snapped. I couldn't wait anymore. I couldn't take that risk. In between tears, I grabbed, I squeezed, and I pulled. The heart had attached itself into threads of flesh that wouldn't let go quite as easily as I wanted. I slowly pulled the heart closer in the direction of my head, avoiding the pain each beat sent from my hand down my wrist, down my entire body. After one blind moment, it tore. The vines had instantly let go, and I collapsed onto the floor behind me. His heart had lost the pulse and color that made it so magical and strange. Replacing the rubber was an outer layer that had petrified upon losing contact to Scott's body. It was hard, almost wooden, but not quite. It had jagged edges and dents, and along the middle it had a rough part that circled around it. It resembled a really big peach pit. It was a seed. I cradled it, figuring it was harmless now. I stood up and looked at Scott's lifeless body one more time. I weighed the pros and cons of kissing him, but settled on a fist bump, and through nod and agony cried out the last thing. I'll ever tell Scott something I'd rather keep to myself. I went home slowly, taking the rain in every drop at a time. Every noise, every car, every person, every splash of a puddle felt so inconceivable, so distant, so pointless. I walked home, and when I got home I sat down into the corner and cried. I held what used to be Scott's heart against my chest as close to my heart as I could, and I cried. Did never think I'd have to use a fucking flashlight again. My son Josh stormed into the house an hour ago, and I left to get us some food because the fridge had fuck all in it. Sure, the traffic was a little much, but 2 hours of time is not enough for what I came back to. The entire windows from the outside were almost entirely covered in thick, growing, writhing vines. They shifted and moved and rapidly expanded, reaching and clawing for more space to perch onto. I got out of the car without a slight thought of what to do. The vines found an open window and must have accidentally opened the door as the vines reached out into the outside walls and the pavement lining the floor. Josh is still inside. I didn't have my phone, so I rummaged through an old camping bag in the trunk and found a flashlight. The battery was fucked, but hitting it brought it back for a few seconds, and I decided if it was all I could use, I would abuse it. The vines didn't tear, but they moved on their own accord to avoid whatever force was being put on them. I opened the door, and it slowly slithered away, as if alive while growing longer and longer, stretching itself as far outside as it could, though. The small bakery with blue and white walls and a cozy feeling now looked as if abandoned and left to rot. The vines only allowed small beams of sunlight to pierce through the darkness, and whatever fit through the unforgiving tendrils came out in a similar color, painting every surface of wood in a sickening green hue. The vines continued shifting and contracting, grabbing and feeling around different chairs and counters. Any baked goods that came into contact with the vines instantly rotted and became covered in mold. I walked around to the back room, where the staircase up to my living room was. The light from the windows didn't reach any further, so I smacked the light into submission and got to see the stairwell in its honest light. The tendrils wrapped around the ceiling, the walls, and the floor, shifting once I changed my footing to slowly climb up or hold onto the walls for balance. Vines hung off of the ceiling, curling and moving into the air as if confused fingers trying to find a point of contact. The house was alive. I walked up the stairs as quickly as my fear allowed me. The living room was in a similar state of overgrowth, with one clear difference: vegetation. Giant pink daisies coming out of the couch, glowing blue mushrooms growing from the green that had coated the TV. The vines seemed to be growing out of the stairs that led to the third floor, which led to Josh and his bedrooms. The vines on the stairs here were thicker. They wouldn't move. They were stuck in place and thick, and I tried to avoid touching as many as I could, but there were just too many. Once I finally made it to my son's room, I opened the door, but the flashlight ran out of charge. I smacked it over and over, but the battery must have fully fried on the way up. "Josh?" I called out for my son, but no words came back to me. The only response was two green pulsating orbs I saw in the corner of his room, beating together in unison. I think my engagement ring was killing people. I never thought I'd be writing this, but I feel like I need to tell someone what's happened. Jake and I had been together for 3 years when we started talking about getting engaged. We both loved antiques. You know, items with history and stories embedded in them. Every weekend, We'd hunt together through antique shops and estate sales, searching for all sorts of forgotten treasures. That's how we found the ring. The perfect ring. At least that's how it felt then. It sat in a locked case at Madame Eloisette's shop downtown. A deep blue sapphire set in an intricate gold band with delicate filigree. Art Deco. Unique. Perfect. I knew it immediately. Jake, ever the romantic, insisted on buying it then and there. He shooed me from the store, promising to make it special. 2 weeks later, on a warm evening, he led me to our favorite park bench beneath the willow tree we always loved. He knelt, eyes bright with excitement, and presented a small velvet box. I knew what was inside before he even opened it, but when my eyes finally fell on the ring itself, my heart stuttered, and I seemed to forget everything I knew. My mind went blank. "Where did you get this?" I asked, fingers hovering over the gold band. Jake grinned. "You know where." And I did know, of course. My brain was just temporarily mush, I guess. It was the ring from Madame Eloisette's shop, but inside the band, something new gleamed under the lamplight. An engraving. LM and JC. I ran my thumb over the initials. Lucy M and Jake C. Jake shrugged. It was already there. Fate, right? The night air seemed to press around us. Something cold curled in my stomach. "What are the odds?" I whispered. "I'm not a statistician," Jake laughed. "But I think it was meant to be." We drank champagne under the willow, and I fell asleep that night with the ring on my finger, feeling like the luckiest woman alive. Then the nightmares started. I dreamed of a bride in a blood-spattered church, sobbing behind her veil. When she turned to face me, her face was bruised and tear-streaked. I woke gasping for air, my chest feeling like it was about to explode. "Bad dream?" Jake mumbled, pulling me closer. "Just nerves," I lied, glancing at the sapphire gleaming in the darkness. The next morning, things got so much worse. My neighbor waved as I collected the mail. The sapphire caught the sunlight, flashing blue for just a second. 5 minutes later, her brakes failed as she backed out of her driveway. Her car plowed into an oncoming delivery truck. I watched paramedics pull her mangled body from the wreckage. I tried to convince myself it was a horrible coincidence, 1 in a billion or something. But then my boss dropped dead during a meeting later that afternoon, just moments after complimenting my ring. "An aneurysm," they said. I saw how his eyes fixed on the sapphire right before blood trickled from his ears. Deep down I knew I had been cursed by the ring I loved so much. I had become a walking omen of death. On my way home that night, still in shock, I witnessed a man glance at me, then climb up to the ledge of my apartment building and jump without hesitation. The thud his body made when it hit the pavement will haunt me forever. His dead eyes found mine in the crowd. I clutched my hand to my chest, and the sapphire felt warm against my skin. Too warm. When I looked down, I noticed a faint burn mark on my skin. Around midnight, I decided it was time to remove the ring, but my finger had swollen. The band wouldn't budge at all. No amount of soap, ice, or oil could loosen it. As the days continued, so did the deaths. A barista touched my hand while returning change. Minutes later, he choked to death on a scone as I waited for my cold brew. An elderly woman who admired my ring at the grocery store was crushed beneath collapsing shelves. Moments later, at dinner with friends, I kept my hands hidden under the table, but Melissa insisted on seeing the ring. The moment the sapphire caught the light, a waiter carrying Cherry's Jubilee tripped. The dessert's high-proof alcohol splashed across nearby tables, igniting instantly. The entire restaurant went up in flames. In the chaos, I watched Melissa's hair ignite, her scream swallowed by the roaring inferno. Only Jake and I walked out unscathed. After 8 deaths in a week, I was desperate. I started keeping my left hand hidden whenever I was out in public, stuffing it deep into my pants or coat pockets. I also began Googling the ring online. It was such a luxurious and unique ring. I was curious if it had a history. It didn't take long to find the original owners, Lydia Min and James C. LM and JC, just like our initials. The newspaper article from 1952 was brief but chilling. Local bride found slain on wedding night. The accompanying photo showed Lydia wearing my ring, and she looked just like the woman in my dreams. Something else disturbed me too. Jake had changed. His once warm brown eyes now seemed glassy and unfamiliar. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at the ring with an expression I didn't recognize. Possessive, hungry. When I mentioned the deaths, he'd shrug them off as coincidences. When I suggested we research the ring's history together, he changed the subject. I began to research alone, visiting libraries and local historical societies. I found more articles about Lydia and James. They'd been high school sweethearts. James had given Lydia the sapphire ring as a symbol of his undying love, a family heirloom passed down through generations. But on their wedding night, something had gone terribly wrong. The police found Lydia's body in their honeymoon suite, strangled. James was nowhere to be found. For weeks, the papers speculated about his whereabouts. Had he killed his bride and fled? Had they both been victims of a robbery gone wrong? 6 months later, James' body washed up on a riverbank 50 miles downstream from the bridge where his car had been found abandoned. His death was ruled a suicide. In my search, I discovered an old woman who claimed to be Lydia's cousin. She lived in a nursing home on the outskirts of town. When I visited her, she recognized the ring immediately. "You need to get rid of it," she whispered, her papery hand clutching mine. It was cursed by James' great-grandmother, a woman scorned. She wanted revenge on the family that had rejected her, so she placed a curse on the ring. It brings death to anyone who sees it, except for the wearer and their beloved. She leaned closer, but there's a price for that protection. "What price?" I asked. "I think your souls," she said. I can be certain. I only know James wasn't himself after he gave Lydia that ring. It changed both of them over time. The night he killed her, his eyes were different. I had seen them myself, empty, like you were staring through a window. Like Jake's eyes now. The old woman told me how to remove the ring. It had to be done on a new moon. There was a mixture I needed to prepare, herbs and oils, and other things. I won't mention here. The process would be painful, but it was the only way. The next new moon, I prepared everything as I was told. Jake watched with those unfamiliar glassy eyes as I submerged my hand in the mixture. The pain was excruciating. My skin blistered on contacts, but it worked. The ring loosened. With one final agonizing pull, I wrenched the ring free. My finger came with it, severed cleanly at the knuckle. Blood poured from the wound, but I felt only relief as the sapphire glowed with rage. Jake lunged for the ring, but I was faster. I dropped it into a cloth bag and tied it with red thread 7 times exactly as instructed. We drove to the old bridge at the edge of town. The bag seemed to get heavier with each mile, and I could swear I heard scratching coming from inside it. At the center of the bridge, we stood in darkness, staring at the black water below. No moon reflected on its surface. "Are you sure?" Jake asked, his voice finally his own again. I nodded, clutching my bandaged hand. "It has to end." He held the bag over the railing. For a moment it seemed like he couldn't let go, like the bag was stuck to his hand. Then, with visible effort, Jake opened his fingers. The splash below was small. The ripples disappeared quickly. It's been 3 weeks. No accidents. No deaths. Jake is himself again, though he remembers everything. We both do. When Jake and I drive over that bridge, we both fall silent, staring at the water below. Sometimes I dream of the river bottom, of silt slowly covering the cloth bag, of water flowing endlessly over hidden things. In these dreams, I see fish swimming near the bag, then darting away suddenly. The ring is down there, waiting. Is it truly contained, or simply biding its time? When I wake from these dreams, my missing finger throbs with phantom pain, and I wonder if somewhere in the darkness of the river, a sapphire pulses an answer. The Gray Hills home for boys was perfectly unpleasant in every way, the secrets it hid being only one of many reasons it was so feared. But you learned in foster care that you didn't complain, not even in the worst homes. If you did, you were beaten, starved, or worse. At Gray Hills, they only had to give us kids one warning, Mrs. Blanche. Take something or she follows you there. No one quite knows why people are so afraid of Mrs. Blanche. The older boys said she was a vampire who once a year took the nastiest boys at our home as a human sacrifice. Others say she was a ghost as old as the dilapidated, unkempt home itself. and if you made eye contact with her, she stole your soul. Some said she was just a nasty old witch that you didn't want to be on the bad side on. But there was one thing they all agreed on: the tall, the small, the young, the old, the well-behaved, and the misbehaved. If you went to the forbidden third floor at exactly 4 o'clock, you were never heard from again. I hadn't quite decided if I wanted to, if I'm being quite honest. But nonetheless, I didn't like being challenged. And so at exactly 3:55 a.m., I ascended the dark, creaky wooden staircase in the pitch dark. In the middle of the night, the 200-year-old home seemed spookier. During the day, its pastel-colored walls and bright lighting gave it an almost homey feel. But at night, the lack of light sources made it almost seem like a dungeon. I was 15 years old, and a problem child when they dared me to do it. Tommy, the oldest boy at the home at nearly 18, and his cronies, Butch and Ace, they saw the tough boy attitude and decided to make it a test. If I survived the night, they told me, I'd be cool enough to hang out with them. I tried to steel my nerves. As hard as it may have been, I could feel my heart racing as though I'd run a half marathon as the gravity of what I was doing sank in. Blanche may have been an old urban legend, but it was one of the expressed rules of the home to never, under any circumstances, go to the 3rd floor. It was my 10th home in 6 years now, and the thought of being kicked out nearly froze me in my tracks. So I simply didn't care anymore. Truth was, I wanted a family more than anything. I would never say it aloud, but it was the reason for my temper and devil-may-care attitude. But at 15, it seemed little more than a daydream, I reminded myself. No matter how many social workers promised my happy ending, the truth was I was simply not going to have one. And without a doubt, I knew it to be a trap. At exactly 4 o'clock, I opened the old door to the 3rd floor, rusted over with age, wood splintering, lock broken, and as I expected to see only darkness and dust, I saw something else instead. Paradise. The room was draped in a bright light, illuminating something wonderful. It was as if Christmas and Thanksgiving had come all at once. A long table lined with food, candy, gifts, and all the trimmings laid before me. Its warm red walls inviting and colorful. It was more food, more toys, more sweets than I had ever seen in my life. It reminded me of an old story, Hansel and Gretel. Things that are sweet and inviting, in my experience, are never what they seem. And for that matter, what would all of this be doing in an old house falling apart at the seams? Nonetheless, I took a small step inside and looked it over carefully. There was nothing inherently off about the decor, nor the food. And when I looked back to check, nothing abnormal had happened. The door hadn't locked, it hadn't disappeared, as you'd so often believe by this point. It remained open for me to flee at any time. It left me a single question: what was happening here? The room let me leave, and I will never understand why. There was no Mrs. Blanche, no deadly curse, no evil spirit, but there was an uneasy dread that crept over me long before I descended the stairs and found the home empty. Not just of children, or workers, mind you, but abandoned. Empty, as if everyone and everything had vanished in the night. Panic set in about that time, as I rushed out the front door and into the still night air, but the home was not all that changed. It was then I noticed the neatly folded letter at the head of the table. It may have been a big mistake, I believed, but on the other hand, it was, as they say, curiosity that killed the cat. Instead of walking right out, I took that paper and decided now was the time to leave. With this as proof, I had done as they asked. They told me I'd been missing 100 years. Told me that Great Hills had been abandoned after World War II. They kept my name out of the paper, kept my story under lock and key, and when I was released from their hospital, they put me back into foster care, in a world I barely knew anymore, a world that had forgotten me, the old house, and the story of the forbidden 3rd floor. Where there had been a long dirt road now stood a firm black surface. Where there had been trees, now stood tall buildings, and on our once quiet road a blinding light of some sort of vehicle hit me long before I felt my body hit the ground and my vision grow dark. I live in 2025 now, or so they tell me. It's been 3 years since that day, and while I've adapted and moved past my fear and shock, a new fear has replaced it. Because if you thought time travel was the twist of my little fable, you'd be wrong. Take something, or she follows you there. It started when I found the note hidden in my things. I didn't understand it until a week later when I saw her for the first time. A woman with matted hair, greenish-hued skin, and a tattered dress made from what I can unmistakably describe as human flesh. She watches me from the corner of every house, pearly white fangs barred in a smile that would be inviting if she wasn't so unsettling. So if any of you so-called urban explorers decide to explore the old Grey Hills home for boys, if you dare go up to the forbidden floor, don't make the same mistake I did. Take something, or she follows you there. Every year she gets a little closer. Her sharp, dazzling red eyes get a little sharper. Her grin, impossibly wide, a little nastier. This year, I woke up to find her at the foot of my bed, watching me with a look that told me whatever horrible thing Mrs. Blanche has planned for me, my time is up. You don't need to fear supernaturals. The problem are the people who harness them. Chasey smiles at me, while she playfully stirs her cocktail with her finger. I smile back. I know what she is doing. I've heard about the nail polishes, which change color to reveal drugs in your drink. But she has nothing to worry about. At least nothing like that. By the way, what are you studying? Sorry if you already said it, but I can't remember. She asks, looking deep into my eyes. She probably likes them. They are the only extra in my current form, green like the forest. Informatics. It's pretty boring, but at least it will give me a job. What about you? I'm in a business class. Oh, interesting. And what's it like? I ask, though I already know the answer. Honestly, I hate it, but my father made it obvious that I have no other choice. I'm sorry, but hopefully you'll be able to do other things after you graduate. I mean, he won't be able to control you once you have a job. It hurts to say this, as I'm well aware this is her last day on this earth, but I have to play my role. She smiles at me again, and leans closer as she starts talking about her hobbies. I listen carefully, memorizing all of her expressions. She is so kind, and so lively. I don't know how I'll be able to do this. Sometimes she asks about my interests, and I tell her the completely made-up life story of my current form. His name is Mark, and honestly, he's a fine guy. He looks good enough to catch your eye, but not good enough to remember him. I would love to be Mark. Eventually, she stands up from her chair, her movement a bit dizzy. I jump up to help her. She laughs as I carefully hold her arm while she establishes herself. Would you be a gentleman and help this young lady get home? I don't like being alone on the streets. Nishi says, with a shy little smile. The game of don't speak about the obvious begins. I hesitate. I really don't want to do this. My necklace gives me a slight shock. Of course, one of my owners is watching. They wouldn't miss the show. Gladly. I answer with a wide smile. The cold, silent darkness of the street hits different after the changing colors and soft music of the bar. Chasey leads me, although I know the way myself. I had to fly over it several times, so I won't mess up. I slowly walk beside her, holding her hand, while her head rests on my shoulder. My necklace constantly gives me small pinches. They want me to remember what happens if I don't obey, and yet I know I still won't. At least not completely. I can't go fully against the order, as I'm not sure if I would survive it. I'm a useful tool, but not unreplaceable. So as we get to the road closest to the edge of the town, I slow down. Sorry, just my shoelace, I say as I bow down. Chasey waits a few steps away. I have to think quick. I choose the Raptor. I can have the fastest kill with that. It's a Utah Raptor to be exact. But no one cares about that. The girl's eyes widen as my outlines blur, and I jump on her in this form. She doesn't even have time to scream. A sickle claw to the hearth, and it's over. Nearly immediately, my whole body bursts into pain, and a black suited figure steps out of the woods. The pain is unbearable. Sometimes it's like thousands of cuts, then bug bites, then electricity, then bones breaking. I fall to the ground while uncontrollably changing forms. A slim, red-haired girl, then a bearded dragon, then a toucan, a Shetland pony, a green tree frog, an old, bearded man, a secretary bird, an Irish wolfhound, all twitching uncontrollably in pain. You fucking moron. I told you it has to be a bear attack. B-E-A-R. Don't you fucking know what that means? Little help. It's definitely not an ostrich, or what the hell you morphed into. Now get the fuck up, and finish the job. Or you can be a lab rat for another month. When he finishes, he releases the button of the little remote-like device he's holding, and the pain suddenly stops. Then, with a cruel grin, he presses it down again. This time it's not unbearable, so I can work. I hate the bear. It's clumsy and slow. I don't know how long it takes to make the body look like the victim of a bear attack. When it's done, I morph back into my desired form, a Doberman, as I'm only their dog. Well, not really. I think people treat dogs better, but I don't know for sure. Then I'm led back to my traveling cage, in the back of a truck. We go to a building, where Will is waiting. He looks even more tired than usual. They probably overused him again. I slightly wag my tail when he takes my leash. He smiles for a second. We can't greet each other in more expressive ways. Then reality folds into itself around us, and we're back at the headquarters. This was the story of my last murder. I wanted to get it out of myself, but now I'm going to shed some light on the details. Maybe it will be easier for me now. I'm a shapeshifter. Well, you probably guessed that. I don't exactly know how old I am, or who are my parents, but I think I'm in my 20s in human years. I don't really have a gender either, but if it's possible, I prefer a male form. The rules of shapeshifting are easy. I can't do existing persons, but otherwise, pretty much anything I know the anatomy of. Modern animals? No problem. Extinct ones? Depends on how much we know about them. Bigfoot or a unicorn? Piece of cake. Dragons? I did it once, after a year of preparing, and despite my wings, I still wasn't able to fly. For some of my life, I lived pretty normally. I was mostly Rebecca, a blonde woman in her 30s, working in a kindergarten. I loved working with children. That's why I used a female form. It's easier to get a job in those fields, and people won't monitor you constantly. I was pretty good at my job. The parents always bragged how imaginative their kids are, showing me their drawings of animals and creatures, which were far more detailed than usual kids' drawings at that age. And the kids loved me as well. When no one was around, I would transform for them. Most boys, of course, wanted dinosaurs, while the girls loved the unicorn, which I made to be pony-sized to be safe for them. When they grow up, they will think of it as overly vivid imagination, or some tricks, but at least their childhood was magical. This was until one day, when an uncle came to a parent meeting. He said that he's there instead of the kid's dad, who usually visited the meetings, as he had some important office work and couldn't come. As a sign of their appreciation, he gave me a necklace. He said I'm the best teacher little Davy ever had, and he always talks about how much he likes when I play with him. I knew him. He was a shy boy, and he loved my Deinonychus form. If the other kids were playing, he would often come and just sit beside me while I warmed him with my feathers, like a hen does with her eggs. He would always giggle and cheer up when I did that. The necklace was beautiful. It was made of leather and had a silver-colored metal forming a turtle. I refused at first, but the uncle just kept saying how much the whole family appreciated my work, so eventually I put it on. You can guess what happened after. They kidnapped me from my home. I couldn't do anything. I can't take the necklace off. If I try, it basically knocks me out. Since then, I was used for many things. They ran some tests, but they were mostly just to break my spirit, trying out the limits of my form's regeneration ability by pulling out my nails, feathers, or fur, or simply cutting off my limbs. Sleep deprivation, beatings, endless physical exercise. After I was obedient enough, they started with the real deal. They needed a well-mannered family dog of a politician to suddenly go berserk and maul them. I was there. They needed the clickbait news to be about some Bigfoot sighting instead of a drug deal. I was there. They needed a millionaire to be killed by a shark on a vacation. I was there. They needed the pet crocodile of a mafia leader to escape and bite its owner in half. I was there. They needed a celeb who spoke out for some minority to be bitten by a snake on their hiking trip. I was there. They needed a fly on the wall of the president's meeting room. I was there. They needed a pretty girl or boy to relieve the stress after work. I was there, and I was there when they needed the daughter of a CEO who wouldn't elaborate in some business to be killed by a bear. At first, whenever I could, I would rebel against them. The biggest one was the dragon incident. Some idiot wanted a dragon to guard some important documents or something in some basement for 2 or 3 years. In complete darkness, I nearly lost my mind. The only thing what saved my sanity was that I figured out how to breathe fire. They didn't know that until I burned 2 of them. I was a lab rat for a year after that, used for practicing drug effects and amputation methods. But after a time, I mostly grew numb. Now I know I don't really worth anything. So I only break their commands to make the deaths of the people I have to assassinate less painful. The reason I didn't write about them in a more detailed way is because I don't know anything about them. It's probably some secret organization, but I have no idea who they work for. The only thing I know is that they collect people like me, supernaturals, and they don't go soft on any of them. Once I saw a large man beating a little girl unconscious because she couldn't make a piano levitate 10 feet in the air. But the only other supernatural who I was allowed to be in contact with was Will. If we put it simply, he could teleport and take a maximum of 2 people with him. He says the process is way more complex than this, but the point is that he can travel impossible distances in a blink, but he has limits. Lots of them. Each teleport physically weakens him, and because of the way he's made to use his power, he looks like a living skeleton. But he's a good guy, and the sole reason I'm writing this, because Will managed to escape. He found a way to take off his necklace and simply shift it away. They located him in an hour. He was in New Zealand, but they couldn't do more than that. I don't even know how they managed to figure out this much. And you know who can smell out an escaped aspect? That's right. I was taken to a helicopter, as a dog, of course. Then when we landed in some rural area, my handler pulled my leash so I would focus on him. You won't get a sample. I'm sure you know the smell of that bastard. Find him and kill him. I don't care how. If you try anything funny, you'll be the practice dummy for the pyromancer until you are no more than ashes. And I know you can't be a phoenix. I didn't know if they really had a pyromancer, but I sure didn't want to find out. So I tracked the necklace, now looking more like a collar, was giving me slight strangles ever so often as I followed the familiar scent to an abandoned barn. As I stepped inside, once again I switched to the Utah Raptor. Will was standing by the wall. I stopped. I didn't want to do this. A wave of pain crawled over my body, and I took a step forward. Mark, please, don't do it. Will's eyes widened as he watched me walking closer, getting ready to pounce. For a moment, I switched back to a human form. Mark, you know I don't have a choice. It'll be fast, I promise. At least they can't hurt you anymore. Suddenly everything fell dark. As the doors of the barn closed behind me, I switched back, and I was able to see clearly in a moment. Will stepped toward me, whispering something. I leaned closer. Listen, quick. We only have minutes. I know how to take off your necklace, but you have to trust me. I froze. I didn't even think about how he managed to escape. Warm hope rushed through my body. Okay, do it, I said after turning back into Mark. Lay down, he said, and I noticed he was holding a bottle in his right hand. I did as he ordered, and nearly immediately, I felt something, burning like liquid fire, running down my neck. This was even worse than the shocks which the necklace caused. My body started jerking in unnatural positions, and I nearly transformed, but Will yelled as he saw my outlines starting to blur. Whatever you do, keep your form. So I tried. Weird mechanical buzzing came from the necklace, and under the liquid fire, I felt it melting onto my skin. At the same time, a loud bang echoed on the door of the barn. The next moment, the door flung open, and a man stood at the entrance, with a gun pointing to us. Will grabbed my arm as the first bullet flew. I felt the reality unfold, an agonizing pain crashing into my left calf, just as we popped out somewhere else. As the trees towered over us, we both fell to the ground. Blood was pouring from my leg, and Will was looking like a corpse, plain and barely breathing. He used his ability too soon. I changed to a different form, a large, black-haired guy with a stupid little beard, and leaned over him. His eyes slowly opened, and he pressed some words out of his blue lips. We are near a city. You will know which one. Take me to... He finished the sentence, but I won't share it because I don't want to give away any indicators of our location. And after that, he fainted, with a line of blood running from his left eye. I carried him to the location. I don't know how long it will take them to track us again, and what they will bring with themselves. Will's a bit better now. He said that he will take us to someone who knows how to make them lose us, but he can't do that until next day, because he would kill himself otherwise. I don't think we will make it until then. And even if we do, I have no idea how to stop them from tracking us again. In years, months, or weeks. I mean, they managed to do it once, before knowing anything about me. And now they know most of my human forms. Either way, this will probably be my last post. If we escape, I think my only chance is to never be in a human form again. And Will said that if they find us before tomorrow, he will teleport. I will go with him. And then I'll turn into a bug and fly into the first car I see. After all, the world won't really lose anything with me. It was a simple Tuesday night. It was also an unusually warm night, and I was alone. Alone at home, eating a bowl of pasta in front of the television. Expecting nothing, thinking of nothing except of what was going on in front of me. A Tuesday night alone, nothing more. A sound, a knock at the door. I turn my head in the direction of the door and yell, "I ain't interested. Fuck off." I wasn't in the mood for companionship. Silence. Brief. Another set of knocks. Thrice. In rhythm. "Dude," I said, "no. Leave before I call the damn cops." I yelled again. Silence again, followed by 3 knocks. I muttered, swearing under my breath and placing my food on a nearby table, and got up from my seat, leaving the TV on as I went to the door. More knocks at the door. I said no. I said as my hand reached for the knob. "What the f-?" A man stood before me. Sharply dressed in a slick-looking hat, he was dressed in a suit and met my gaze with a small grin on his lips. "Ugh, what or why?" "Good evening. I thought I was going to be knocking all night," he says, interrupting me. "Perchance, have you come upon the map? Do you have it with you?" I say nothing, not recognizing the man before me or understand whatever he said. "Are you all right? Do you have the map?" He asks again. "What fum? What map?" I struggle to say, my lips and mind not in sync as I struggled with words. "The map," he says with a smile. "Do you have it? What are you even on about? Who are you? Doesn't matter who I am. What matters is if you have the map." "What map?" I yell back. "Why are you knocking on my door at 11 p.m.? "It's because of the... I don't know of any map, so that's a no then." I raised my arms and shrugged. "Look, you're wasting my time and my weekend. I'll just say no so you can just get out of here and leave me alone." The sharply dressed man grinned, nodded, and tipped his hat to me. "That's a shame. I thought you've received it by now," he says as he placed his hat back on his head. "Never mind. Pardon the intrusion, sir. Have a good evening." He turned to walk away, walks off my porch, and turns around, waving at me with a gentle hand. "Good evening. Stay safe for what's to come. Keep safe now." What is H? A sharp sound, shattering glass, and a spark in the air. I turned my gaze to the living room and then back to the strange man. He was gone. Oh, no. I rushed back to the living room, pushing the door behind, slamming closed as I got back to the room. There was an ugly crack in the middle of the TV screen, glass all over the carpeted floor, and exposed wires sticking out of the LED. "Damn it, why?" I muttered to myself. "Now I gotta clean this foe." Another sound. A thump. A loud, heavy thump that emanated from the front door, like something was thrown against it. I froze in place. What now? Returning to the front door, I pulled it open, expecting the strange man to be standing in front of me, but he wasn't. There was no one, save for a jet black duffel bag by my feet. I bent down and slowly unzipped it, curiosity taking hold before common sense. There was a gun inside of it, among other things, as I gently rummaged through the bag. A large silver revolver, a small plain white box the size of a Rubik's Cube, a bottle of some liquid that smelled foul, and a handwritten note on creamy white paper. The note read, "This should help for the night. The gun is already loaded. Keep safe. Do us proud." The gun was heavy. The small box rattled as I shook it, and the bottle sloshed in place. I opened the box. It contained several bullets, presumably for the revolver. The gun was indeed loaded. and with the basic knowledge I have about guns, I could tell it was live. The hammer was already pulled back. I bring the bag in, closing the door, locking it, and putting the bag on the first few steps of the staircase that led to my room, and began to inspect the bottle with the strange liquid. The liquid was nearly pitch black, like coffee or soy sauce in a clear glass bottle. The liquid had an oil-like sheen on it, and there was a faded-out label on the bottle cap, just visible enough to read it. Deterrent. Deterrent? For what? A sound. I jumped and nearly dropped the bottle. Upstairs. What now? Ringing. Loud in the silence. The phone? I grabbed the bag by its handles and ascended the stairs. The ringing continued. It was indeed emanating from my room. I opened the door to my room, switched on the light, placed the bag on my bed, and promptly picked up the receiver. No one on the line save for a robotic phone voice. Please put on loudspeaker to proceed. It said coldly, please put on loudspeaker to proceed. Nope, I say to myself. Fuck this, whatever's happening. I slam the receiver and silence fills the room, only to be broken in an instant by a high-pitched noise that made me wince. Ugh! I cry out. What? It sounded like static or feedback from a loudspeaker. It emanated from the telephone's loudspeaker. Good evening, ladies. Gents, and however you identify as. Are we ready for tonight's event? A voice emanated from the speaker of the phone. He had the tone of a TV show host, like someone out of Jeopardy, or The Price is Right. Cheers followed the voice, like a TV audience just out of reach. I recognized the voice. It was the strange man from earlier. Tonight we have a young man named Kid. What was your name again? The strange man on the phone asked me. I pulled the landline out of the phone, and it continued. Hey, I'm asking you your name. How is this? Never mind names. Let's call you Jack. You look like a Jack. The strange man's voice retorted. Laughter and applause followed. Cheery sounding under different circumstances, but unnerving as of now. Tonight we have Jack, ready to participate in tonight's game. The voice continued. He had just received his welcome package and seems be ready to play. Play? What are you on about? I yelled, feeling slightly silly as I spoke to an unplugged phone on loudspeaker. The game, nearly 4 million, is at stake tonight. The voice replied, and Jack here tonight doesn't have the map. Oohs and ayahs erupted from the unseen crowd behind the strange call. That means the prize money will be doubled. We all know that going mapless is a brave move, and we here do appreciate brave players, don't we? Applause and cheers followed. The rules are simple, Jack. Survive. A chill went down my spine. Survive? Yes, survive. There are no rules. There is no time frame to meet, but we do appreciate if you were to wrap it up soon as possible. We all have work in the morning after all. Laughter this time from the audience. Survive and make sure the final blow is from the gun in the bag. Otherwise, no prize money. My gaze falls onto the bag on the bed, the gun glinting in the bedroom light. Of course, since there are no rules except survival, that also applies to your target. The voice said with a chuckle in the end. Tonight's target is a prowler, a skittish little thing that had taken down our last player in just 10 minutes flat. Can you outlast it, Jack? I couldn't muster a reply. A game? Survival? A prowler? What the hell is going on? You have a total of 12 shots, Jack. 6 in the gun and 6 in the box. Make sure to save one for that noggin of yours. The voice says, with a dark chuckle, just in case the prowler comes too close for comfort. Laughter erupted. A mix of anger, confusion, and fright suddenly boiled within me. I picked the phone up and threw it, colliding with the bookcase a few feet away. The phone shattered into pieces and knocked down a book, a copy of The Island of Dr. Moreau. I found myself breathing hard. My head ached and I felt my world spinning. I took a seat on the edge of the bed and began to box breathe. Inhale, count to 4, exhale. I did this thrice. I felt slightly better soon after. What is going on? I must be asleep, dreaming. Surely. I felt my pocket vibrate and ring. My phone. I forgot it was in my pocket the whole time. A text. Let the game begin. Jack. A crash. The sound of glass shattering downstairs. I shot up from my seat and froze, dropping my phone on my bed. I grabbed a revolver, undid the hammer, and held it close to my chest. Hesitantly, I left my room, leaving the door open and slowly going down the stairs. I could see some shards of glass by the base of the staircase. Something broke the window from the kitchen. I walked down the stairs as noiselessly as possible, holding the gun close to my right thigh, pulling back the revolver's hammer gently until I heard a soft click. I got to the base of the stairs and peered within the kitchen sliding area. The light was still on. Broken glass was strewn everywhere. The toaster, the microwave, and the few other things I used to make myself dinner lay scattered on the floor and counter. The window above the sink was smashed open from the outside. I heard a noise, a growl, a low droning that almost sounded like a crocodile's hiss. A shape flit past my peripheral vision, something tail-like. I yell, point the gun forward, and pull the trigger. The revolver goes off. A force sends my forearms upwards, and I end up putting a hole into the fridge. I stood there, breathing heavily, ears ringing and gun smoking from the tip. I missed. My senses return. I run to the smashed open window, minding the glass everywhere, and yelled for help. But I froze before my potential egress. I stuck my head out and felt a chill run through my body. Darkness outside. Pitch blackness. Dark like a starless expanse of night. No nearby house, street, or lamppost. Only a cold wind and distant noises that I did not recognize. My phone vibrated and rang again. I went back inside, placed the gun on the counter, and pulled my phone out. Unknown said to call ID. I picked it up, put it on loudspeaker, and spoke, entertaining the lunacy that I found myself in. What the hell is going on? Get me out of this shit. No can do jack. You need to play the game. You already wasted one bullet, make the rest count. Cheers, laughter, and applause erupted once more. Don't try to escape too. You saw how it is, and no one likes the dark, right, Jack? Oohs and ahs from the crowd. Go to hell, I say. I'm not playing your hunt or whatever this is. Too late, Jackie boy. You need to see it to the end. Both of you are players. Both of you are eligible to win the grand prize, the voice said with showmanship. Bye for now. We'll be watching. But first, these messages from our sponsors. Music began to play. Static began to fill the call before dropping out entirely. Placing the phone on the counter, I took the gun as I heard a blood-curdling sound. It was nothing I've ever heard before. It sounded like a wolf's howl with the unsettling laughter of a hyena. Come on, I say with bravado. Show your face so I can put a bullet in it and end this. Bravado became fear, which became anger, before becoming fear again, all in the span of a few seconds. I never expected my night to become this. I took a few steps back. Glass crunched behind me, a warmth down my neck. Wait, something hits me square in the back. I found myself flying forward and hitting the fridge face first. The gun flies out of my hand, landing just beyond my peripheral vision. I yell in pain, feel the wind get knocked out of me as a warm liquid began to trickle down my forehead and eyes. Blood. I could taste some as I dripped down my face and onto my lips. Blood obscured my vision. I wiped it away with a shaky hand and tried to view my assailant. It was nearly impossible. My vision was blurry due to my injury, and my head hurt as I looked at the thing before me. It was as if I could not fully comprehend it. All I could recognize were long human-like arms that ended with eagle-like talons. Arms that were an inky black, almost like leather, and were nearly as long as my own body. They bent unnaturally as the creature slowly advanced towards me. The creature's face was unrecognizable, seemingly a mesh of teeth, tendrils, and fur. God, I found myself screaming as I tried to reach for the gun, which lay just beyond my reach. One of its hands pulled my left ankle, and my arms flailed to get the gun. No, I reach it. I clasped the gun in my left hand and pointed it to the creature and unloaded the firearm until the gun went click. I was unsure if all had hit it. My vision was obscured and my eyes pounded with pain, but I heard a yelp and the creature's grip loosened until I managed to pull my leg away. It turned around and ran. I heard it go upstairs, damaging the wood staircase as it went. I could hear it creak and smash its way upstairs. Yeah, you better foo. Pain. My leg bled slightly, and I wiped the blood off my face with my forearm. I unchambered the gun and let the casings fall out. Smoke gently wafted her out of the chamber. Damn it. I say to myself as I got to my feet, adrenaline coursing through my body. The rest of the bullets were upstairs. I had to finish it. I could kill it. Getting to my feet, I saw a blood trail, small puddles of Eerie